very much I'm going to share the forum. I'm very, very delighted that you're all made comments. And I think they've also joined us from live streaming. So if you've got friends who wish to do let them know to go to our YouTube channel and find the type of Merton Council. And then on that channel, you'll be able to see the live stream. Just to let you know that there shouldn't be a fire alarm this evening. This one plan, if there is, run with us. So anyway, we know the exits. And of course, doing a fantastic job the team still there. It's a good opportunity for us to grab a brew if we need to. And we've got Smart here, who's leading a bit of a presentation exercise of several councillors here to support the councillors' response. But I know that hasn't come up in the open forum there. So what I'd like to do first is there's some councillors online but also in the room. I'd just like them to just put their hands up, introduce themselves. So you may not, some of you may know your councillors, some of you don't. So I just want them to put their hands up to see who they are, what ward they're from, and that way you can give us basic points for our after for the case.
I'm Natasha, I'm a councillor in Mitcham. Please don't grab my face, you can speak to me if you want to speak.
Hi, I'm Councillor Billy Christie from Mundy. Hi everyone, my name is Osama and I'm the councillor of the cricket team. It's in fact where we are at. So,
got Councillor Martin Welsh online as well. He's on video. He's my fellow colleague from my skills. We've got Chris to keep us all in order and check. Tell me if I'm sticking time and support the speakers tonight on the first night. So I just want to give a general order. I would say most formal meetings, especially for council, is age better than them. Just to do that, we always expect government to use the rather and if it does go and the front, I will close down the meeting. I don't think it's enough. What I do plan to do is opportunities for no longer and if there's additional points I can't answer, if there are questions to the council, we'll of course take those away and come back and new question. So we've got so we've got a really, really important agenda tonight. So many of you know about Morrison's leaving the central professionals and the future of the council. So this is why it's really important to hear what are the answers possible in future plans. We've got Natash talking about the future waste collection in the street cleaning services. Many of you I know have sent many cases to the councillors. I've got many as well. We'll make sure it's best service. Chris will talk about the future for engagement in Mitcham, so the community forum, the structure. So there are some proposed changes, but I'm also keen that the energy in the room alive as well. And then of course with the open forum, and I know several of you want to talk to items such as the Mitcham gas taps. And before we get to the item, I'll just explain some more ground rules, because I am also the chair of the planning, and we have several members of the planning committee here as well, so we can understand what we can and can't go into terms of our own effect. You can speak to it. So for that, I'd like to hand over to Paul, who will introduce the first item.
Thank you as well. Welcome everyone. You hear the main subject. I'm Paul Gary, I'm the energy generation Merton Council, and I'm going to give a couple of updates on some issues with the centre at the moment. The first will be the latest position of Morrison's, then the plans for the site itself, and there's investment as well. Sorry, there's another note. Okay. Yeah, so a surprise to you as much as a surprise to us that Morrison's beginning of February announced they were closing the Mitcham store on the 17th of March. Now, losing any major retailer is a blow for a town. Not only for the shopping, but actually the people bother as well. We always thought the lease would extend until the point the site could be developed, but we understand from the landowner that it was a commercial decision of Morrison's to terminate the lease when we did. So the council, your councils have written to the landowner, we've had meetings with them as well, to find out what's going on the site, what their plans are in the interim. So what's happened initially is the site it is in Merton's local plan as a development site. And we always knew the landowner wanted to redevelop the site, potentially for new shops, workspaces and homes. There were pre-application discussions until last summer, and then it went quiet. So we thought things would come back early this year. I think the Morrison's leaving caught the landowner by surprise as well. Certainly that's what they've intimated to us. So they're really working hard to actively manage and market the empty units that are there and trying to get other occupiers in there. So the landowner is hopefully going to get other people in there. What the council is working on with the landowner, we are really keen to promote pop-ups and temporary uses in there. There's no use to the town centre having empty units. So if there's any charities, community organisations, pop-ups, we want to have those units filled with any activity in the meantime, as we gather when the site can be developed. So the landlord is committed to work with the council on those new well-used activities, and we're having regular meetings with them. So if I get any further updates, I'm happy to bring it back to the forum. In terms of the redevelopment plans, they are now re-engaging with the council planning department on plans for the sites. As you may know, the council owns a lease of the car park. So the multi-storey car park is the council's for the best distance. So we've got a legal relationship with them to make sure that the future plans are something that they best mention. So the planning process, we expect that they're re-engaging in the pre-app process now. We have spoken to the developers. We really want them to do some public engagement up front. I don't think there has been a community consultation on the plans yet, but they were in the infancy, so we want to really engage with you with the plans as they emerge. So I'm happy to update councils in the forum when that happens. Apologies. So as well as the Morrisons, we have written to the owner, I think the MP has as well, and the councillors, the status of the other stores. We understand that Poundland isn't going anywhere, they've got a longer lease. Boots have written back to the council saying they have no intention to leave anytime soon, but of course it was redeveloped, they want to come back. We've not heard back from Supergrub yet, and I think Halifax was not ready to close their store yet. Lloyd's is staying for now as well, is that right? So what we've also asked the developer to do is we don't want the gesture way looking like boarded up. That's not very much at all. The landlord is committed to getting vinyls and graphics on the shop fronts just so the place looks clear for them after while they're looking for other tenants to use. So if we're getting more updates that way.
Can we ask who the landowner is?
Yeah, sorry, I should say that at the beginning. So it's owned by Centrica, which is British Gas Pension Fund. The managing agents who look after the development, that's LaSalle, so they're the ones who do the leases and management of the site. And they brought in a company called Active Developments to look at the planning and redevelopment of it. So there's 3 parties involved, with the LaSalle's to be the main ones in charge of the site.
This is for boots and food, and all that. They're very similar to released by the same time as Lodge.
Yeah, I probably won't do a bit of commercial sense for not, but yes, they're roughly this year, yeah, without giving the months away. And again, that's where, in discussion with LaSalle, they'll be talking to each shop owner to say how long they're staying for. Just because the lease terminates doesn't mean to say the shop will close. They may stay on a bit longer until the point of redevelopment. So we've been asking what the timeline is for the occupiers there.
So is it just that side or is it not the other side?
No, it's not. No. So they own from Morrison's to Poundland, not the other sides.
What was the timeline that they told you?
For the planning? Yeah, so they want to re-engage the council planning service. That might take the next 6 months, so over the summer, and then if they get an application, then we're probably talking at least the end of this year for a planning decision.
Are you saying that the car park isn't the closed?
We've no plan to close the car park at the moment. So the multi-storey is, the council's got a long lease left on that. About 24, 25 years, maybe roughly that. So whatever the developer wants to do that site, they need to have the council working with on that. And we know the car park, we know it's car parking, but that's also used. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do is give the final update on what the council's doing, then I'll come back to that question if that's okay. But in the local plan, the council has designated that site parameters of this housing. We haven't seen the design yet, so we'll scale the master out. So the final one, the final update before take questions on the floor is what the council's doing. Some of this the council was doing anyway, but it's more focused now that we know what's happening with Morrison's. Through the council civic framework, we are in recruitment currently for a town centre manager for Mitcham. It's something we felt Mitcham needed for a while. There's other town centres in Merton where they might have a business improvement district, they may have a business association already, and we feel that Mitcham really needs that. It's good to the community forum, give the community voice. That isn't really a forum for businesses yet, or maybe there is what we don't know. So we really want the town centre manager to be that link between local businesses and the council. We feel that's something really missing in Mitcham. So it's to give businesses a voice, maybe find out who's out there, who's operating these things, so try and manage the town centre better. That will also be a role where it's a link to the police. You know, we have a thing called Locations Board, where council officers and police and our Safer Neighbourhoods team work together on any ASB issues. So the town centre manager is critical in looking after the town centre aspect. So that's a role where we've just done the job description. That'll be out to our next week, and we hope to have that role in the next couple of months. Final update before questions. Another role which we are looking to commission out is, if you remember, probably 2015, we did a lot of events with Mitcham Market. We tried to revive the Market Square. We had money from the Mayor of London, and when we had the resource, it worked. And the minute the resource wasn't there, it never worked. So we have recognised the market isn't as sustainable as it is now. Love the stockholders out there, but we need more of them, and we need greater variety with it. So with the council, we'll be commissioning a market operator. So like perhaps a company, but certainly a market manager, but a company who can bring stalls from elsewhere and really market and publicise the Mitcham markets of this. So we want to bring more stockholders in. We're open to run more events, so it may not be as market stalls, it may be food, it may be music. We're open to any ideas and suggestions there too, but we want to get that person in to work with the council to manage the market squares specifically. So that's a couple of updates the council's invested in. Happy to take questions, and if I suggest maybe 2 or 3 at a time. Man at the back says his hand up for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we all realise the fact that Morrison's is closing, the level of customers in the other shops will drop. And although they're saying they're not going to be doing anything at the moment in relation to still being in Mitcham, we all know that as far as business is concerned, it's all about the level of customers. And you'll find that Superdrug customers of Boots, even Poundland will drop because people won't be going to the town centre of Morrison's, and they'll perhaps go to Littleton and elsewhere. So the amount of people actually in the town centre will not be as heavy as it has been, which might have a knock-on effect if it's left for any long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we're working with the landlords to make sure that something's in there and ends for. I do think it's in the national press. I think Morrison's have had a rough time nationally. They're now not going to be a supermarket. I think Aidan, Lidl, Aidan. Maybe that's playing out in Mitcham in terms of how profitable that store was. But yeah, it's something we need to watch because if the football drops around, the danger is other shops.
So, Morrison's, as we all know, the heartbeats going up because they sold everything. Older people who are all online and have things to do with it. We went out every day, it was a meeting place, and it got healthier really fit because you walked there and walked back into shopping. You can't do online and everything. delivered. And it was a social gathering for other people with meet people and chat. It's really going to affect all ranges, but senior citizens, you know, they're getting help and exercise. It's going to be devastating, heartbreaking. But I'm just really trying to think that you could replace it with another supermarket, because you can't all get on buses and go to Sutton and Tooting and wherever to carry heavy shopping and have it delivered online. We do need another supermarket for senior citizens, for everybody. It's convenient. As you know, Morrison's is like a giant coffee shop. It's sold everything. If you can try, please, to get a supermarket.
So I absolutely agree with you. It's not just a shop, it's an art experience. So we are working with the landowner. They've got agents that are trying to market it. Just saying as well, when Morrison closes on the 17th of March, it doesn't mean to say they're out. I think Morrison's might be stripping out furniture, shelves, etc. But I know the landowner was actually asking them or working with them to keep some of that infrastructure in the shop, because if another food retailer is interested, it's handy to have the fridges and shelves and all that there. So until we hear back from the development, we don't know, but that'd be
General question was
yeah, so it is a concern of us, and that's why we're looking to invest where we can. So the reason we're looking at town centre management in the market square is the council owns those spaces, we can approve and run what we want there. The challenge really is where we don't own the building, we've got no control over who's in there or how it's marketed, how it's let. And I think that's where we need to look at public realm in the spaces. Actually, if we can animate Mitcham ourselves and bring a bit of life to it, that may encourage people to move into shops or other creative businesses to move in. But it's a challenge we can do it.
Yeah, I've got a question really. Did you get anything specific feedback-wise from Morrison's as to what their reasons were, and have you been able to take that on board in terms of future plans for regeneration of the site? So, for example, an idea in my mind was that the site is fairly small for a supermarket on average. Is there a possibility to maybe do a deal with the landowner to perhaps expand it onto the first floor in the car park to allow a better site for another supermarket chain that might make it more attractive?
Yeah, I think if the landowner comes forward with any suggestions to build, we will listen to them. I think the challenge at the moment is Morrison's did write to the leader of the council. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it said, but I think there was partially that national picture of Morrison's nationally. I think locally as well, Morrison's really are, other supermarkets to the big four are struggling with the likes of Aldi and Lidl, who really are stealing market. Again, market share. If you look at Mitcham, there's lots of Lidl's around here. There's one in City, Burton Roads, Stretton Roads. College was getting a new one, there's an Aldi at College as well. Within quite a short distance, there's a lot of these competitors, and I think Morrison's have been competed out really. The other factor may well be is because they're the least in the building, it wasn't a Morrison's site. There's often big supermarkets like Morrison's that own the building, they own the car park. Perhaps because it was leased, it just isn't something they were invested in. But I don't want to speak on behalf of Morrison's.
About the community food as well, access to food, and it's not necessarily like for life when you look about your needs. So you can find certain things, but not necessarily the full range of food that so I think it's important to come out to the market. Another element is like security and whether a free space will attract antisocial behavior in Mitcham Town Centre, and whether council is sort of liaising with police, or if this is, part of the conversation, like to try and keep it, try to avoid it becoming some sort of harm or unpleasant behavior.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So that's why we're working practically with the landowner. We don't want that as both things. We want to make sure, and councils are on top of the landowner as well, making sure they are marketing the units, that we get updates regularly. Retail's changing, the high streets are changing as well. Some of it's not all about shopping anymore, it's about experience. So it could be cafes, things that open at night, home cinemas, all of that really. So I think we need to be adaptable to anything that comes our way, equally presented in the community. looking for space. So I know through elsewhere in my work, we've got a few suggestions from charities who want space. Empty shopping is great for that if the landowner allows them to go in. So where we're at the moment is the landowner has had to work with us on these suggestions. We're not yet clear what the timeline is of how long an empty shopping unit might be there for, but we will get.
There are possibilities here in terms of before we get the buses, so we have to try to think that we would put something noxious and make the same people have to say that's what Cllr is going to do. It's not just going to be short.
No, it's not. So in the local plan, so I'm not sure what Rob has for fun about it. But so the Morrison site, which includes the Morrisons, the shops at Poundland, the multi-storey car park, and the roundabout back. That's the site we're talking about. It's in Merton's local plan. It's designated for town centre uses, so that could be retail, shops, or workspace, or cultural spaces, and it does promote housing above it. So that's the language, is that there's no designs to share at the moment. So that's why we've been saying to the developer, please do the public consultation when you're able to. Oh, well,
That is really
I was going to say that's what I know it's been discussed tonight. But yeah, my team are dealing with that, so I can't comment.
Transport for London was totally rationalised in bus routes in the near future. Some years ago, we had to try to make sure that the 200 bus would continue to serve the town centre instead of being turned round at Cricket Green, which was the original intention. Will we be consulted if there are any proposals to do anything to our local bus routes?
So with the Morrison development, there's no link there at all to public transport. So I'm sure if there were any bus changes, you'd be consulted. But I know from the bus scheme we've done, we made it heavily up the back of Morrison's, and there's a nearby up there. Well, the road is still the council, so the road is still there, but the bus is still parked up and have the rest. There's no proposals that we're aware of to change the bus routes.
Just that I understand the two things are not connected, bus route and supermarket, but the absence of the supermarket in the town centre might require to have more frequent buses that go from, well, from like Cedar Avenue kind of side of Mitcham towards Lidl and Asta, because I think it's going to be really hard for people, especially people who are a bit older, to walk all the way to Asta. So they might have to take the bus instead of walk to the supermarket. So we might actually have more frequent buses because people the route might become more competitive.
Yeah, so that's something we can monitor with the TfL. So,
yeah, so that's a very, very good question. So transport time, I'm looking at the bus. There's a lot of it is focused on the central one. We are looking at dispersing across the outer one, so that's a very good. Well, that's an open goal we can ask for set, and we part that.
Is there a council? No real public one.
Interesting. That's the question was: is it just a couple of companies that own the town centre? Across the Merton, it's really mixed. Morton's completely mixed up in terms of ownership. Yeah, most of Wimbledon's pension funds own block by block. In Mitcham, the London roads and the buses go north of London Road. That's pretty much every individual shop. Every individual shop is privately owned. The ones where I know there's a major landowner would be, well, Morrison site, that's Centrica. Across the road from that, where Farm Foods is and Peacocks, I understand that's one owner. But everything else in town centre is private.
It sounds like a long question, but it could be a relevant one. I mean, at the moment, one of the things we know is pretty much flooded with very similar outlets in terms of barber shops and the like. Is there a way that we could start looking at generating that area, looking at some kind of protocol where we only allow a a certain number of similar shops to exist in one stretch of the road. I know that Lambeth Council had that a number of years ago, so you can only have sort of 3 eateries within a certain distance of each other, and then it had to be broken up with other development. I mean, I don't know if that's something you think about.
Yeah, so the land use planning, we did similar policies years back in Merton as well, more so for the lots of things. Nationally, the land use designations all changed. The government trying to promote more business of actually simple into one use class, which means shops can really be anything or flip without planning permission now, whereas the control you mentioned there used to exist. So it's a bit more of a challenge now. I'll take the question in a second, so I was going to mention when we get the town centre manager in, no, it shouldn't be too far away. What I really welcome is a forum like this or a workshop like this, because I think there's a lot of ideas that need to come from because the council doesn't know. And if there is ideas for shops and uses, or people want to open something, we need that workshop and a forum to get the ideas out. So mentions a great bit, some of it. But I think there's there'll be ideas out there that the council just doesn't know, and we need to try and capture that somehow. So definitely when the town centre managers in, we would welcome the workshop on topics you're suggesting. I'll say this just to hear you.
When idea, another thing is very good. I don't know if everything, whatever mention is moving down, I'm upset for that. And whatever the case we gain, because I don't know everything, who that man, it's too high, and I can't send the mobile, online, and about yes, we can go down in line. Qualified with closing, and we want to not that much closing. About yes, we can go on, yeah, and everything going online, I'm patient.
Yeah, so I understand concerns. I think even before COVID, high streets were changing anyway. There's a rapid change in retail and banking business going online. It is a specific challenge for many people just don't like online banking. I think, and I hope the councils will correct me here, I think we get a service in the library where people can go into the library and meet banking representatives no matter what bank you're in. So if you're not comfortable with internet banking, there is that service in the libraries as well. Not sure if it's all the time, but it was Barclays and yes. So I think if you, as I can understand the concern banks closing, but you're right, the post office doesn't really that service money. So I can't remember last time I was in a bank, but I'm not. Yeah. Sorry, the gentleman in the back, and then.
And make residential conversion not supposed to be done. Rules on the side, investment from any other than Aldi's and I don't know, maybe using some stuff for using the cost of the waste services and anything to the cost of the.
So I think the question there was, can the council invest and do something quicker? I think all I would say is what is good at the moment, we've got a landowner that is talking to the council. They've been quite proactive on this. They've been quite open with this, and I think that's a good place because not every landowner or anyone in planning wants to do that. Whether the council invests, I think what I'd say is when you've got commercial agents already working in that industry, they probably get more insight to the industry than the council would never have. So I think at the moment we are giving them the space to work and see if they can get tenants, and we are on hand to support them if there's any pop-ups. I don't think we're in the space at the moment where the council can step in and buy and redo it itself, because that would be a cost for the taxpayers. So I don't think we're there yet.
Just one more.
So,
Sorry. How long is the lease? So Morrison is leaving. How long will be the next frame for the next shop?
I don't know that specifically, that's for the landowner to answer, but I would imagine that if the landowner is going for planning, they might only be given one year, 18 months, 2 year lease, and some other points.
That's where I'm point. Who is the person who wants to invest from a normal coffee shop or for an old or another market if you've got a lease of 1 year or maximum 2 years? You wouldn't do the first person to say that I'm not in a coffee shop because in 2 years I have to leave. You don't make that money.
Yes.
So all this we're talking today, it doesn't really make sense because no one can invest there because they will leave within a year now for 3 years or probably less.
Yeah, so that's where we are promoting pop-ups. So pop-ups, there are organisations that might be in for a year or so, then they move on somewhere else. It takes spaces like that. So we know a number of examples elsewhere where the pop-up market is there. So we're hoping the reason we're promoting anything that comes in really, but we want to make sure it's actively used.
Last 3 questions. I think ladies.
Yes. You talk about how we start at soon rather than, and so it's something that we learned there. I used to first Sunday of every month in August, they have an amazing thing. I know in autumn, let's start, I can't wait to start.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've been there before, these work, I don't want it should be.
And I think that's what we recognise. So the question is actually just start now, and some of these things we are. So with the market manager, that brief was written, that's going to secure in the next couple of weeks. The town centre manager job, that's going to next week to be advertised. So the council moving quickly where we can control it and we can get that resource in. So we're not waiting for anything else to happen other than the recruitment process. So we'll move as fast as we can.
There's a company called Secret Cinema who purchased Devons and mostly includes a temporary, really rather great class cinema. Is it worth reaching out to them to get rid of the cinema? Yes. You've got no entertainment only there. We will be having here, but only there.
Yeah, Secret Cinema is a great example. They pop up, they're for 6 months, it draws people in, right? Just London, and then they do something else. It's part of my other option for that as well.
Yeah, what is you don't own a retail space as such,
So yeah, you're right, we're limited in terms of all of the buildings, but we do offer visitor discounts, so new businesses moving in, or startups, so we can be quite flexible in what business rate discounts we can offer. So that gets people in active there. We also, I think the role of town centre manager will be as well is we know that's from the census, demographics are changing, our neighbourhoods are all changing. We need to understand who's in Mitcham, who's going to spend money here, what do people want, what they're going to do. And I think if we get that demographic baseline of what Mitcham is now, that's what the market to potential retailers and investors to see. You know, you might have thought Mitcham was a city village, and then it's like, look, there's lots of people here who want to spend money on things. So I think that demographic analysis of the spend power is probably something we don't have yet, but we'd like to get into that one. They don't. Morton's got a forum where some of the businesses meet each other, but it's not formalised. Wimbledon Village is a business association, it's been going for years. I think you're right, Bob, it's 10 4 years ago we did. So we've got Wimbledon's got a bit. The reason we don't have business in Boom District here is it's a top size of business rates, and Mitcham just doesn't have enough business rates to support business rates. Final one was we've commissioned Merton.TV Commerce, and they are reaching out to local businesses as well at the moment to give us that baseline of who's in Mitcham and around the town, not just to see if there's any who we can work with and bring them in.
Thank you, Paul, just read it. So thanks very much. So I think we heard a lot about the pop-ups, including a great idea of Secret Cinema. Price London using that for the town centre manager, and obviously the marketing market. And I mean, I have concerns obviously about, we know the campaign has been run previously about processes, so it's an action there for us. Also about when we get the set town centre manager in, can we actually have a formal workshop? I think it's a fantastic idea, so we'll take those in action. So you all can engage in that and what the priorities are for that town centre manager. And finally, I think it's away buses. So given the rationalisation of the TfL fleet, how can we ensure that we get our fair share as well for increased numbers of buses? I'd just like to thank very much Paul for coming and speaking to us this evening, and if you could give him the usual statement as well. Super. So we're going to now hand over to Natasha to talk us through waste collection and clean streets.
Hello. I hope I can follow that, and I hope this is a positive meeting and a positive way forward, because we're starting quite a low base, so let's go for it. So yes, this is just to talk you through a decision we took yesterday in Cabinet, which was to outsource our bin collections that we currently do at the moment, and to in-source street sweeping, so that we take control of that. And this is just to talk you through the reason we've made that decision and what's going to happen next. So just to take you back to how and why we are where we are. So we all know that there's been issues. As I became a local councillor in 2018, and between Clarion and street sweeping, my inbox was overflowing. So what are the issues we had with the service? So the original reason we outsourced was to save money. It was to save money. It was to try and deal with some more austerity issues that were coming down the line, and we were just trying to make as many savings as we possibly could, which meant we had quite a loose specification. So it was more down to the contractor about how and when they would clear things. When we outsourced the contract, we also outsourced the monitoring to what you might have heard of as the South London Waste Partnership. So that meant that it was hard for us to rectify things when they went wrong. There was very little flexibility and very little responsiveness when issues did arise. So we all know what that's meant. That meant that we weren't happy with the state of our streets, we weren't happy with the responsiveness to reports of fly tipping, and we were, all of us, kind of battling through this. So what did we do? We took a decision in October to end our current contract with Veolia, which is our current contractor. And the first thing we did was launch a public consultation. So we've had over 2,500 responses to that consultation. We did that online, we did that in person, we did these pop-ups in the high streets, including Mitcham town centre. And we also did a telephone survey, which was more representative of the boroughs. It gives a nice baseline of responses. So what did we find out? So you can see here from 2017, which is when we first outsourced the service, to see where we started off when we first outsourced, and then there was a big dip in terms of our waste collections, recycling, satisfaction, and street cleaning. That dropped right down there in 2019. But as you can see, for collections and recycling, that improved and has been continued to improve throughout the time. So that's things like your wheelie bins and your food waste collections. Now, I'm not here to say that they're perfect, of course they're not, but if you think about how when we first had wheelie bins and the way that they were received, you think about where we started and where we are right now. We now have the 7th highest recycling rate in London. We have a really, really solid food waste collection, which some councils are now starting to adopt. So we're kind of ahead of the game in terms of waste management in this borough, so we're in a good place. But our street sweeping hasn't recovered and has stayed low and has continued to be low. To the point where in last year we issued Veolia with a service improvement notice, and from that we've had a whole action plan based on improving standards here, specifically in the east of the borough, and that's caused them to reprofile and reschedule their sweeping schedules and really focus on the things like detritus on this side of the borough. So yeah, the collections we can see are vaguely quite solid, but our street sweeping needed it needs to be looked at. And fly tipping, street litter and overflow bins are our biggest concerns. Of course they are. They're the things that we all see when we walk around the borough. So we did some special analysis of people that live in flats, because when I took on this role as lead for local environment, one of the things I keep saying is if our collections don't work for flats as well as they do for front doors, then it's not working. Because if you're living in a communal space and your collections aren't working, then the service isn't working, because you've got thousands of people that are affected by it. So we did some special analysis on those areas. So for residents who live in flats, there were some of the main concerns were around the size of collections and that they weren't being helped to recycle. So if you think about it, you're doing the right thing, recycling, but if you're in a communal collection and your neighbour isn't, that contaminates the whole thing. And you get into this spiral of nothing's being collected because it's contaminated and it doesn't work out very well. So it was really important for us to capture their thoughts. Some of the other feedback we got around, so people are generally quite happy with Garth Road, and those that do use the booking system were quite happy. I know that it's controversial at first, but actually if you can book a slot and not have to sit in a queue, it's working out quite well, and it's really good for people that live in lower wards and don't have to live with all the fumes of people queuing up to come in and the congestion that can cause. We've talked around things about bulky waste collections and garden waste collections. People were satisfied with when they used it, but again, there's concern around the cost of those services. And thus, unlike neighbourhood recycling centres, now they can be fly tipping hotspots, but are also helpful to people who can't get to Garth Road. So there's a balance here for us. Currently, we clean them 3 times a week, and we're trying to stay on top of them. But when people decide to fly tip at these locations, it's very hard to then do the cost of having to keep sending crews over. So the conclusions that we came to was, as I said, our collections are quite solid. Our street sweeping needs improving. Fly tipping is a massive issue for people, and residents want to be able to recycle, but understand what needs to be recycled and have better communication from the council around that. The least satisfied area is South Wimbledon. Now, if anybody's ever walked down Merton High Street, you will know why. We've got to a much better place than we were a couple of years ago. When I first had my son, I used to call it buggy slalom, when you're going around all the black sacks and you're trying to just get down the high street, because businesses and people living above the shops were just flinging everything out on the street. We're in a much better position now, but when we did this survey, that completely rang true. And we need to address those issues around flats above shops and people living in communal collections. So we took this away, we looked at all of the options available to us, and genuinely every option was on the table. We didn't go into this process thinking, oh, we want to bring it in, we want to take it out, we want to create our own company. We just wanted to see and try and deliver the best service possible. The options we looked at was contracting out, bringing the service back in, creating an arm's length company, or doing a joint venture where we partner with a private company and try and do some kind of agreement with them. But ultimately, there was this sort of that's a bit too complicated. So these are kind of this is the sort of analysis we ran everything through. So yes, finance is important. What's also important is how we can actually do the service, if it's going to work, can the council handle it, and if it actually delivers on our objectives of trying to keep this borough recycling. So we basically narrowed it down to 2 options, which was contract out or bring back in, because creating an arm's length or a joint venture became very bureaucratic. You suddenly start spending money on having a director of a company and a board of a company, and actually we want to bring service closer to people, not further away. So we ruled those out. So we looked at contracting in, which, we do have control over service from contracting in, but it could be more costly in some cases. When you contract out, you do access to the technical knowledge from the wider market. You're able to have greater resilience of your service. So if you think back to COVID, we were one of the few councils that continued to have collections. Some councils stopped them for a few weeks because they couldn't handle the sickness. But because we were joined up with a larger partner, we were able to pool on a larger amount of resources. And if you think about the driver shortage again, we managed to keep going because we had access to a greater pool of drivers, and that gave us some extra resilience. So we did a evaluation of the scoring, and what it came out of was to outsource our our collections and insource our street sweeping. What we're going to do now is focus. So that was phase one. Phase two is now where we hopefully will drive the improvements, because we've got to start working on our specification. If you remember at the beginning of this, I said our original specification wasn't very tight. What we're going to go for now is a specification that is much more prescriptive, as in you will sweep this street on this day and it will be done to this standard, rather than you will sweep this street to this standard and you decide how and when you do that. So we're going to become much more prescriptive. We're going to do things like try and share the schedules online so that you can see when you can expect to have your street swept, and everybody knows what is expected of the service. So this is just kind of like the sort of things will be, as I said, within the specification. So what happens now? So we've made the decision to go ahead with this mixed economy approach. So that means the officers now are busy going to the market and asking them to respond to what we would like to do. There's a risk here that the market doesn't want to do this for us. This is not the standard way of delivering these services. Normally they like to do everything all together, so they might turn around and say, actually, this is us, and at that point, we then will have to go back to the drawing board. But right now, that work is continuing, and we, as a cabinet, will start to go through that specification and trying to work out what things we can add in, how tight we want it to be. In the short term, there'll be some very quick things that you'll see happening over the next couple of months. We're improving flat above shops, so we are sending everybody who lives in the flat above street every quarter or every 6 months get a parcel of bags through their door with a leaflet that tells them when their collections are. We're increasing their collections to two a week rather than one, because these places generally have less storage. And we're also going to take Garth Road on the road. So we want to bring Garth Road closer to people who don't have cars, because it's okay if you've got a car, you can go to the tip. If you don't have a car, it's quite hard to get rid of bulky waste. So we're going to try and we're going to do a pilot of bringing Garth Road closer to the community and closer to places that aren't easy to get to Garth Road. So Garth Road on the road is what we're going to do. Yes, that's it. So happy to answer any questions, take any comments, and thank you for your time. Should just say for
the bin collection, so if they've got rubbish to clean up that day, I think most of the street cleaners honestly using a lot of these days. Those street roads, they walk along, they see things, which ends up for a lot of smoothness, staying there. The end result of that is not
yeah. So just so with the first point, absolutely, it's one of the most frustrating things to me. If you come and collect the bins and then you switch 2 days before the bins have been collected, it makes no sense. Doesn't make any sense. So one of the recommendations we took this to pre-decision scrutiny on the 13th. And one of the recommendations there was exactly that, to prioritise street sweeping after the collections, because it just makes sense. But that's hopefully the kind of gain we have by having an in-store service, and we can control that, sort of having to pay extra to make sure that that's aligned. On the second point, we've invested in mechanical sweepers. Now I know that they're not as good as necessarily getting into the nooks and crannies, but what that means is that what we've been able to do is, where those sweepers are able to, so the big wider pavements, but then able to redeploy people with brooms. What the council needs to do, and what we need to press on, is the client team to go up and make sure that the detritus that you're talking about is swept up with the brooms. And it has improved in some areas in the council, but I think that it will take some time to get that stand back up to where it needs to be across the entire borough. Sorry, there was delayed in the rental.
Of your Garth Road being on the road, and I've got a quick
Actually, that's fine. There's plenty of space. Actually, I'll suggest that to the Yeah, I'll suggest that.
When they have been restoration and planting, they are private houses. It's clear.
No, thank you for that. And actually, that's the point. That I know it's frustrating, and I know that it is hard, but the council is quite responsive in terms of dealing with issues when they are reported. They have to be reported. So I encourage everybody to use Fix My Street. It's helping us deploy enforcement. You don't like Fix My Street?
No.
You call them. Yeah. That's great, but also if you can download Fix My Street on your phone, that's really helpful because that spits out some data from the officers of the council. They get a heat map of the entire borough and it says there's fly tipping here, there's fly tipping there, and they can deploy enforcement officers into those areas.
And I wouldn't do it on corporate.
So you've got a specific issue there because you've got a mixed use of Clarion, and we're into it. Billy and I are going backwards and forwards about who should be doing what. So I hear. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah. So not it's important as well as in the state or not, because we pay
the same.
salary. Then obviously if the company now take over, we should be paying less salary. So we need to understand what's happening there because we are 1 year later, we're still awaiting all the things we need.
Yeah.
It's almost 1 year.
Yeah, there's an issue. I think Clarion would still be maintaining their estates, but the problem is when Clarion claim that isn't their land is when we get into issues, and it's something we're trying to figure out because I know it's insane. I'm sorry, we've been chasing them backwards and forwards, and it's getting to ridiculous levels now. Sorry, no.
One thing I have to know that we're saying stuff, because I'm not a great thing. They know that I need help and they think my business back. So he's there, so I'm very happy. I've just pointed it. I keep gone back. It's been there years, and every time I do that, council says, "Oh, we close this." Not
Okay. Well, on the first point about the staff, so as when we first outsourced, they'll be protected under 2P, which is their jobs are protected. And most, actually, 53% of Yoda's current staff are still Merton's old staff. So those terms were kept for the entire length of the contract. So actually, they're probably still Merton staff, and hopefully will come back to us at the end of this. On the second point, on abandoned vehicles, I'm happy to take that case away and have a look at it, but sometimes cars do have MOTs and insurance and you don't. Sometimes they do, but we need to pick it up, but I'm happy to take that away and that's specific. Yeah. Yeah. You just put in their registration number and it will tell you, because that might be what's happened. Well, if it's legally there with the council can't remove it, 'cause it's somebody's car, they just parked it for a long time. I don't know. It's not, if it is, it is. Just how about we get the case afterwards, and I'll take it away. Sorry. Yeah, I can't.
Ever consider having an enormous a skip in a road?
So this is the reason we're going down the route of this mobile Garth road rather than a big community skip. Is in the past they've been abused and they've just been people pile stuff in. And actually, what we want to do is recycle things. So we're taking Garth Road, which is the household recycling centre, on the road. Hopefully, we can, instead of just stuffing stuff in a skip and it all goes to general waste, we can actually take things out and recycle and reuse and do all the things we talk about doing, but actually doing that in real life. Sorry, there's a lady in the top, and then I'll come to you, Leslie, next.
I think you mentioned about how happy people are about streets and stuff. I think there is a problem in Mitcham, and I don't know if there is lower engagement perhaps with consultation and therefore it didn't come out as much. But I mean, I traveled throughout the borough and I think I rarely see a situation of flight seeking that is as bad as it is in Mitcham. and I take Vestry as an example, but are there any plans to have a strong enforcement sort of program?
So,
Because I think part of it is people just unfortunately,
so there's two sides to this, right? So
yeah,
the whole point of us doing things like the mobile half road is to try and help people do the right thing, right? That's just like the other half of this is us just doing enforcement. So we have given out more FPNs than any other borough in London, not just for fly tipping, for littering and cigarette butts and that sort of thing as well. But we have done that work. We've launched the Merton Wall of Shame. Anybody who lives in Rayleigh Gardens would have seen that on there constantly. We're trying to figure out another way of designing out fly tipping spots. So do we put planters there instead? Do we put stencils on the ground that say, do not put your rubbish here? These are things we're looking at doing. But the fly tipping issue is about changing behaviour and doing a lot of communications, and it's a lot slower, but actually having the one good thing about the Wall of Shame is it's galvanised people, because we've had people say, look, I know who this is, and it's helped us kind of everyone go, actually, it's not the council that's fly tipping, it is just people randomly throwing things, and it's really helped us get that across. So it's a long-term issue. It's not just Mitcham. It is the only place I would say there isn't a lot of fly tipping is in the village, actually. And yeah, it's very nice. So that's I would buy. It's not just this borough. It's across London, and it's not just across London. It's across the entire nation. There is a national epidemic of fly tipping, and we need a whole national strategy of just how we tackle fly tipping, because it's everywhere. It's something about this. The nation that we live in that does this. It's like Leslie, you were next.
And it keeps getting taken off. I don't think it's but it keeps getting taken off out of the road and sent somewhere else. So he never ends up doing the street. It's only done much trouble anyway. And I think because the one contract that possibly were running it, they were taking out those and not replacing. So they had not enough residents at that time. The other point is, litter comes from those very tiny recycling boxes, and you cannot put a lid on them. So what you need is a medium-sized wheelie bin, quite frankly, because they just get blown down the road. Because people pile them up with bottles of water, they just pile up on them. And
Yeah.
when the floods pick them up, they drop something, they still not don't pick it up. They don't pick the next one. They understand. And I don't feel my because I don't know this one. But I don't know, but if I see in downtown and road, any really high wings that go straight down the road.
Yeah.
But I can feel mine, I can half, and I've seen them fall out of this car.
Yeah.
And so that's right. In the
Yeah.
it's totally.
I mean, we've got so just on the boxes. Look, given what happens for us to get the wheelie bins that we have in this borough, I'm not sure going to everyone and say, hey guys, we're going to have 3 wheelie bins outside your house now. It's necessarily the right thing to do. Having said that, this is an opportunity for us to review the market now and see what's out there. So for example, I get a lot of complaints about boxes opening 3-way bins. And I can't stop the foxes, but is there a better design out there now? So there might well be a better design for this way of separating out the waste. In some councils, they just combine it all, but actually they're moving towards our model of doing the 3-way stream. No, but the 3-way streams is helpful because it reduces contamination, and it means we get better quality recyclers, which means it lowers the cost of us doing this whole thing. What we did do, we started giving away nets to go over the top, which worked out quite well. It did work out, it still worked out quite well, but we need to do this on a mass scale, and actually this is the time to do it. Sorry, did somebody at the back have their hands up? Sorry.
I want to just comment on the community skip idea, because I appreciate that before it's unregulated, then it doesn't work at all, people abuse that. There are models used in other parts of the UK, so I'd encourage the council to think of them as well as staff road on the road.
So, you know, mobile recycling centres and staffed community skips, as in staffed by the community.
Yeah, well, that's I mean, I will do whatever I can to avoid just having general waste piled into a big stick skip and then just send it to the energy recovery facility. I want to avoid that at all costs.
Yes.
But what will happen for the mobile golf road is that we'll have a cage tipper that will take general things. We'll have a vehicle that will take things like furniture, and you have a vehicle that will take things like textiles.
Yeah.
So we're sorting. So it's not a community skip, but we do allow for that type of, right, I just need to get rid of some bits and bobs as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that with the community skips that I've read about online, they do end up becoming recycling centres of thought. They end up becoming swap shops.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's not an either or. But I just wanted to ask, you referenced Cabinet talking about the future of waste management based on the responses that you've had. Obviously, Cabinet is for Labour, and there are other political parties within the borough. So I wondered how the other councillors.
So on the 13th, on the 13th of February, we went to pre-decision scrutiny, which is cross-party. I spent 2 hours with members from opposition parties just to take them through how we got to this decision. We've agreed from the recommendation there. Once the spec, so the thing about the specification is that there's a cost implication. So if we add more things in, it costs us more money. So once we understand the envelope of that, we will go through Cabinet and we'll go back to scrutiny with this, so they can scrutinise where we, you know, the thing is with this, I want eyeballs on it because I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to suddenly just find that we haven't thought of something. So there's no benefit in us doing this behind closed doors. That's why we went to pre-decision scrutiny, and that's why the spec will go back to scrutiny again. So yeah, it's definitely it's an open process. Yeah. So, sorry, this gentleman was first. No. With the mobile golf road. Yeah, we own all the trucks still. Yeah. So all that's ours. So the good thing about this is that it ties with the natural life cycle of the trucks we currently have. So in our capital programme, we have budgeted for new vehicles, and hopefully, and obviously, we are then aiming for those to be EV or some alternative fuel provision, so that they are so they help us hit our climate emergency targets. So it's all married up like that. So we bought the new trucks at the same time we outsourced before, and it will tie up now. No.
So,
congratulations, that's really good. You're an exemplar resident. Are you fly tipping? Is that really something? Okay. Well, we have really. With wheelie bins, they've driven up our recycling rates. Most councils are now moving towards this. The government's doing the whole government's environment bill that's still has out of going through Parliament. Is that their waste strategy is about containerisation and is about this model, because it means recycling goes up and you end up with food waste, which is really good to take out of the waste stream. So I don't think we'll be going back to sacks. We'll be sticking with the wheelie bins, and you know, in broad terms, it's working out well, I think. So sorry.
There's just I'm not really agreeing with the as you say, one thing is criminal activity, and there's been something hugely started. This is big money. And the reason it's big money is because people are sort of lost their access to the money done. If you haven't got a car, you can't do it. So what's the easy thing to do? Someone comes around your house, I'll give this to the market. And if we have more access to these, our social funds, it's going to stop these people that are being paid to fight it. Because they don't know them. They're not registered. They don't know where
But people that come to Merton, they live in North London. They don't live here. They just want to fight it here, but we have to live here.
Well, it's all across London. It's all across the nation. If you live near a country, so you live near the motorway, you'll see, everywhere. Sorry, sir.
The based elections are.
So we've done a bit of analysis on this, and actually ours isn't. So we're kind of mid-table in terms of costing. All it is it covers the cost of the vehicle and it covers the cost of the disposal. No, and I appreciate that, but at the moment, all it does is it covers the cost of running that service. So if something like Garth Road on the road works, that means we don't have to look at. It's a way of us doing that, but in a way we can afford. So at the moment, if we did that, we don't have that budget to kind of just do free bulk waste collections. But I think it would be so very handy to lobby government with, because if we've got a national epidemic of fly tipping, perhaps we need a national scheme for free bulky waste collections that we can afford. Sorry, if I went down to that person.
Okay. You call it the energy recovery facility. I call it the incinerator. Are we still? Is the plan still to be locked into usage of that?
Yeah, because we don't want to go back to landfill. So at the moment, we'll continue to use that. And I think the agreement with that is a lot longer term than this. I can't remember the date, but it's not going to end anytime soon. So we won't be procuring the front end of services with the Salmon and Waste Partnership. So we won't be all sharing that service, but we will be still sharing the bulking, haulage and disposal. Actually, that saves us a lot of money in terms of doing that across 4 councils rather than just doing it ourselves.
So how much does it cost for you to keep collecting the dumps? Because people can't afford to pay you to come and collect.
I understand that, yeah.
It's better that you let people have their waste collected, the bulky stuff collected free, because we could pay tax, which means we don't have to spend more time going on the bar. I'm not saying that the people that deliver and stuff, but the people who just dump a chair in the street and something like that, because they're not going to pay. So
the thing is, I've been through this with the officers and the discussions. And there are councils that have done free bulk waste collections. And if I speak to those officers, those councils in other places that have done this and said everything is completely disappeared because we have free bulk waste collections, and yes, perhaps, but that hasn't happened because the people who want to do the right thing will find a way to do the right thing. If you want to do the wrong thing, can't even bother to go online and book a collection, they will still find a way of fly tipping.
Has the cost of fly gone up?
From what I understand from the analysis, no. It's the rates of fly tipping have remained high. But also the thing to remember is that a lot of the fly tips that we're clearing is linked to things like flats above shops, where you go to somewhere like Green Lane and you've got someone just taking a black sack and dumping it on the street. That wouldn't be part of the bulk waste collection. That's just part of general waste. So fixing and investing in that service should hopefully then bring down the cost of tipping clearances, because that is a structural problem with flats above shops.
This has come up before. We had Consultation for 8 years and fly tipping everything else. So it didn't have that impact. Ask the question.
But I have to say that these were like Mitcham and the area, I think that in the point of people who stay in the street as charity shop, i.e., when they have things, they don't want to use anymore. Instead of going to the charity shop, they drop it in front of their house for that month. And obviously nobody takes like old, mattress, like takes that. And they no, well, but it's on the street, right? Like I think it's really, it is really, I think shameful, honestly. Like your street, your place, who don't go out with their face.
I think so. So as we move through all of this, and so this is taking up quite a lot of officers' time and things like that. The thing I really want to do is, the the fight against the fly tippers has to be a borough-wide thing, where all of the people here that want to do the right thing are on the same side. And so I'm trying to move our comms and our officers in that direction, and that it's not the council doing this. The council's the one trying to clean it up, and actually we need everybody's help to tell your neighbour, if not obviously don't put yourself in harm's way, but let's all have a bit of civic pride. Let's not dump things on the streets because we live here. It's just, you know, we all have to deal with it. Anybody else?
Think that this is a reactive process rather than proactive. Like people love things, they see it, that process. What's the plan for the education?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, there's been a lot of that you're a victim of your own success. So we collect all of our flight tickets in 24 hours. Okay, well that means I can just do what I like then. At the same time, if we don't collect those flight tickets in 24 hours, it makes it hell for everybody else. There is definitely a balance in that. We all of us, we have a kind of working task group within the officers and myself in the council just focused on flight tipping, and we're looking at how we can do better communications, and the Merton Wall of Shame is part of that. I know it's not everywhere, but it genuinely has helped us identify places, and it helps to stamp out really chronic issues, because the thing is, with those really local hotspots, it's people that live right next door. It's not someone coming in. It's you live there and you've just got into the habit of leaving your rubbish by this tree. So by kind of showing them, it's like, oh, actually, I shouldn't do that. So we do better communications, and we are trying to get the resource we need to bulk that up a bit and be a lot more, I don't know, a lot more forceful with our messages around flight tipping. Sorry. Yeah, so we've invested in more mobile CCTV. So there's kind of CCTV we have now, instead of the ones where you have to, like, you know, spend £100,000 putting up. We have these mobile cameras that we go to for Mitcham. We'll go to a hotspot, put that up for a few months, and then we'll move it to another place. So we've deployed those across the borough, and we are using them as much as we can. But the thing is to say about CCTV, it's not a silver bullet. It doesn't stop somebody just because there's a camera there, and also it takes resource to go through the footage and find someone. So it's not the thing that stops. It's part of the solution, but it's not the solution. And we where we can, we have invested in
that. There was something it's still it's so great. I wonder, it's just like this, it's kids, young people too, they would just check stuff. Is there possibly an argument for sort of a program of getting these students?
Yeah.
If you start doing this.
So yeah, and that's part of the whole comms thing that we need to do. So we do have we do things like little posters, like poster competitions and that sort of thing. But what you're talking about is a national campaign that was funded and then went to every council. I would love to do that. I would love if we could have and we do need a national campaign against this, because it's such a big issue in this country, and councils everywhere are struggling to keep up with demand and struggling to fight back. We've got quite a small comms team at the council because we don't have the resource to have hundreds of people sitting around sending out, tweets. So that's what the environment bill is all about. So reduce the responsibility, take that out of the waste stream, instead of us having, as a council, having to manage it, taking it out for that source. Yeah, but the council can't. Yeah. And that's what the government's trying to do, I think, but we haven't quite got there yet. So
thank you very much. So we make it a second round of course. So we obviously got really great hearing about the outsourced waste collection, the insourced sort of street sweeping. Garth Road on the road, sounds like a winner across here. Yeah. So that's it. Right. And really, really good to get some positive feedback as well from customer experience. So thank you very much, everyone. And do send your ideas to Natash and officers when further communications and consultation will be rolled out. So I'm going to hand over to Chris, who will talk about the future of engagement in Merton, which will be coming to council in a couple of weeks. And then I'll pitch in towards the end, because I'm really keen to talk about the next steps of the form as well. Thanks, Aidan. Good evening, everyone. I normally just sit at the front and keep quiet, so it's just a novelty to be actually talking out loud to you all. What we did last December, we did a survey around the community forums. We also looked at all of the activities we offer and looked at what we've been doing over the last couple of years. We learned a lot during COVID and doing things differently during lockdown. I couldn't put people in rooms supposed to those because for obvious reasons you couldn't do that. And we got some really good feedback from people about these forums as well, both the ones they used during when we were on Zoom because of COVID, and the ones that have happened before since. We also looked at what all the other boroughs are doing in London and other boroughs around the country. And there's a wider program as well going on, colleagues in our policy team leading on, about how we engage with our communities and particularly our community groups. So what that led us to was there's a real need to change to our game and to do a lot more to be able to engage with residents and professionals. So we're proposing three great measures in this respect. Firstly, we can face-to-face engagement processes like this. I'll go into more detail what we're coming to. Secondly, we've got a gap around what I would call civic society. So we've got a lot of networks with our wider sector, community sector, faith sector, but not with our residents associations, friends groups, those smaller local organisations. And I think we learned a lot during COVID that there are lots of these informally, just WhatsApp groups for their street. And we really need to be able to tap into that and work with those groups. And also we learned from COVID that we need to do more and offer a better digital platform for people to engage with us. So in order to do all of that, we need to increase our capacity within our corporate team. We have a number of different parts of the organisation that do their own engagement work. I'm not talking about that here today, be that adult social care, working with their client group or with our children's schools and families who work with young people. This is about how our corporate team works. So community forums, and we got a lot of really good feedback. And I think we've worked out where they are. They're both too big and too small. They kind of hit the sweet spots of not working with one of them. So they are high profile enough. They don't attract a big enough audience. But tonight is hugely refreshing. It's the biggest I've seen in Mitcham in many ways. But at the same time, they're not hyper local enough. So if you've got people from one part of Mitcham who want to talk about their particular local issue, it's not relevant to the audience from the other side of Mitcham. So our sort of one size fits all, where we've got these town centre based ones, doesn't reflect the rural geography of where people's interests are. And at the same time, doesn't attract, certainly in the eastern borough, attract a big enough audience to make it worthwhile. So we want to arrange a series of high profile events. What we're going to look at trialling first is a sort of question time format involving leader and account members, other people from services, police, NHS. So make a big sort of dance those events. Mayor of London does something similar already. Other boroughs do other things that are similar. And it was the one thing in our feedback that got the highest score for what people were interested in coming to see. So you'd be able to come and quiz those local leaders, have your say. And then we'll also have in each area, it's still a community forum, but do it in a different way. So instead of having you all sat in rows looking at me and Aidan, we'd have you on tables having conversations and coming up with solutions, and that sort of workshop protocols. So we have one of each of those events in each area across the year. So you have a question time at one point in the year, and a forum where you are having a discussion at another time.
We'll then look at what local activities are already taking place and how best to support it. So in many areas, there are already community associations that are doing a much better job than we are. They're getting better numbers, they're getting more involvement, the councillors are often involved in those already. So we need to map that, we need to understand who's doing what and how we can support it. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, it's bespoke to that local. Civil society, and that relates to that last point about not being bespoke. At the moment, I don't think there is a strong enough level of communication and trust with those organisations. Often it only comes to a head because something controversial like the planning application, and that energises people, so it becomes a sort of us and them. Well, we want to do better than that. We want an ongoing dialogue. We want to be able to get messages to you, so well, this is happening, this is how we get involved, and equally get feedback on these are our local issues, how can you feed that into the rest of the council. So we want to map what's out there, who's doing what reach they have. Is it just a WhatsApp group for our street, or is it a formal structured organisation with regular meetings? We've got loads of both of those across the country. But have a designated contact you can reach the council and say, well, we want to discuss this issue at our meeting. Can we get some input from the council? And also then provide a bespoke e-newsletter. We've got a new system for e-newsletters. If you're not already subscribed to the council one, please do. My colleagues will be grateful if I can bump in the numbers. What we want to do is something bespoke for those residents groups that again focuses on this is the stuff that's coming up, this is the stuff you can get involved in, these are the local events that can be of interest. We want to try and bring these groups together as well. So we're proposing to have an annual meeting, invite all those groups, which we put that out, to come together, talk amongst themselves, look at shared issues across the borough, be it waste collection, the environment, or whatever those issues are. And so you know you're not alone, and you can share that. But I think sometimes resident associations, because you're focused on your local area, you don't know what someone's doing 2 wards over, and it might be really interesting work you can learn from and understand and share. And then the third bit is around our digital offer. So at the moment we've got a consultation hub. If you go to Merton.TV/consultations, it lists all the things that we're currently doing. And you can register for alerts, so if you do put anything up, you get an alert. It also is really useful for us as a survey tool attached to it that allows us to build online surveys and use those quite a lot. But we learned by using some other tools during COVID that there's more out there and we can do better. So one of the things we used during COVID was a mapping tool that allowed people to put a point on the map and say that area is important because of X, and you've got really good feedback from that. So that's something we want to try and integrate. And also more conversational approaches. Again, if you're ever involved in it, Borough London has a Talk London programme where residents talk amongst themselves, and it's a Cllr system that does the analysis. What we don't have the capacity for to sit and read hundreds and hundreds of conversations, so we need a system that's able to analyse that for us and tell us, well, these are the issues that are coming up. This is the tone of the conversation. Clearly, there's moderation issues, and we'll have to manage that and make sure it works properly. But that's the thinking anyway. And then thirdly, we want to look at a residents panel. So what this is, and I've done it before on paper, I'm not old, but we can do it now online, where we recruit a random selection of residents across the borough. It could be 500, it could be 1,000. And we regularly go out to them and ask them about some of those key issues. It might be attached to a particular consultation discussion, or so West, for example, we could approach that group and say, this is what's happening, can you feedback to us? Or it could be on a range of issues, or it could just be sort of satisfaction with the council and its service. So over the last decade and a half, 2 decades, we've done a resident survey where we've commissioned a private sector contractor to go out and interview 1,000 people, usually face to face. The last one during COVID, we had to go on the telephone. And that's a really expensive way of doing things. And it only gives us a snapshot every year or every 2 years, whenever we do. And often it throws out more questions than answers, because it tells us there's a problem, but not why there's a problem, and not what we can do about it. This will give us more flexibility. So if there's an issue we want to address, like climate change, we can ask that first question, how worried are you? But we then can follow it up with, well, what can we do about it, and what are the other ideas you've got? So it'll give us a lot more flexibility for colleagues when they come to us and say, how do we engage with our residents? Well, we have this option. So to help us deliver all that, it's quite a lot. We're looking at bringing 2.5 staff in, an events manager to focus specifically on organising those big events. They'll also do other things for the organisation as well, not just the events I talked about, but do them professionally, do them properly. I was asked the scrutiny when we talked to them who might host those question times, and I said, well, the mayor's one's usually hosted by Nick Ferrari. I don't think we'll get him, but let's start, we'll see if we can get something locally equivalent to do. Then we're also looking at community development, post. This bit I think is quite exciting. This is the bit we'll look at that civic society relationship and build up that level of trust, build up that level of dialogue. And at the moment, I have a half-time engagement officer who does the business as usual stuff around organising consultations. So I'm going to make it a full-time post, and those posts between them will look at hosting that digital platform, the residents panel, and as well as our ongoing consultations. And we do sometimes about 150 consultations. So at the moment, on 1.5 staff, that's quite a lot of activity to go on. And I think at its peak, highways have been doing 30 school streets and LCNs in the space of 2 weeks. So having more options and more flexibility will make that easier than we can meet those kinds of money. So where we are at the moment, we went to scrutiny and they were pretty supportive of the plans. I'm welcome that we were doing something to address this. I'm coming to the community forum meetings, and I do anyway, so why not? So I'm here tonight. Obviously, we've got more than tomorrow night. We are in Wimbledon in March and Rose in April, so we'll have a conversation there as well. We'll look at starting the approval process. I'm in the middle of handling with our HR department at the moment. And then the final decision will go back to Cabinet, we think in June, but that's currently a conversation that's taking place, with a view to us having everything in place ready for a new structure in the autumn. So happy to take any questions.
I think it's really good to try new things, but I'm just wondering what, how are you going to know if it's working well or if it's testing at the moment? So, I do you know that impacts will have it working excellent. Also, it's just my experience that in terms of choosing my panel of residents, that it's extremely difficult to make that a very enough representation of the people, wide people that are coming on, and have to get someone in then you end up wasting kind of the information you get towards potentially the concerns of demographics who are more likely to sign up to those kind of things, and that might not reflect seeing on the concerns.
So there's a few ways we'll go about that. So in terms of knowing it to be successful, the things like events will have a pretty good idea pretty quickly, because we'll know by turnout if that's worked better than the system we have currently. We'll also then get feedback from those who are attending. Was it a good event? We'll use to learn from that as well. As you would at any event, give that evaluation form and get that feedback. So we'll definitely be looking to do that as we go along. On the panel, there are ways around that. We know broadly which demographic groups are going to be more challenging to reach. The way Mundy works is you randomly select from address files. What we'll look at is targeting areas with those demographics where we're less likely to get a response. So we know historically we get less responses from the eastern borough than we do from the west of every doing. So if I need 1,000 people, I'm going to have to send out 15,000 invitations to get that. I might only send 5,000 to the west and 10,000 to the east. Those respondents will have to fill in a form that tells me their demographics. I can then weight sample accordingly. So I'll know whether that 1,000 is representative or not, and if it's not, we can then add a weighting to even it out. So I'll be able to get there with a degree of confidence. We're very, very nerdy and technical. But what then tends to happen is people over time who are on that get better informed and have a better understanding of what's going on by virtue of being involved. But you need to keep refreshing it every so often with new members to keep it as representative as possible. So that's an important.
So but there's something to be said about that old-fashioned thing to say something's happening, or would you like to involve? And I really focus what everyone is going to digitalize their responses, or indeed even looking at what's supposed to finance similar. You know, and I really want to help get our heads around that kind of communication. Design fail as and public notices, but it's still learning. So it's not totally information like that. It's a sort. So let's really contact and not just rely on finding a place on the website. You know, there's plenty of people who are out there. So if I can make that customer recommendation.
Well, part of that, part two is in there, with developing the links with those groups, is to do exactly that. We can work out who their contacts are in those groups, get messages to them, and then they can cascade. I sent out some like 100 posters. Every GP surgery in the area got one. Every community building got one, including in. Whether they put them up or not, I'm afraid I have no control.
Saying, I want to step up this.
Yeah.
You know, like banner about this thing. The next community forum is, and we should work with people. If that's big.
We've tried banners, it didn't work. I used to cycle around the parks, putting them up on notice board. Getting a hold of that now. Well, if I'm kind of about notice for me, so yeah, so I've always been open to suggestions of where I can send them to, always wanting to add to that list, and I'm happy to do that. But it's always an ongoing task. And a lot of the tools that we used to have, like putting as a newspapers, don't work anymore. So we have to adapt to it. I send them to the supermarkets, but again, if they've got to be those sports, I don't know about it, I send it.
We are supposed to be forwarding the text.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
People,
Yeah.
they sit next to these people walking about stuff. That would be a very good place. No, they can go and look at people.
Yeah.
So just before I ask you to thank Chris in the usual way, no, I mean, for me, I took the key from it. This is the last community forum in its current format. So just making sure everyone's aware of that and have that in front of their mind. Just out of interest, some nods, some shouts. Jill's a point about how people found about tonight. Was it word of mouth? Was it email? Word of mouth? Email? Morrison? Okay, cool. All right, okay. Well, so basically, we talked about, or Paul talked earlier on about this having some sort of workshop for the town centre manager. So in between now, because this is the last one, and when Chris's system's up and running, if you want to continue the dialogue, what I've done is I've got an online form here to put your email address in, so that if you want to take part in the future workshop, that's before the stuff comes online, by all means complete this. I can put this around and just put it, go back row by row. If you want to fill it in, do fill it in. If you don't have to. But the idea is, if you do want to continue this conversation's current form, we've got that as well. Sasha?
Just quickly, so Siobhan McDonough, your local MP, as you'll be aware, she'll be along with us fixed councillors, will be holding a meeting about town centre and about the future of the town centre. Hopefully in March, we'll be promoting that. Wednesday the 15th of March, we'll be sending out invites to that. And a lot of that will be about what ideas we can put forward to this town centre manager, and we'll catch that there. So you'll be getting invites to that soon. So hopefully you'll see there. And if you can't, of course, also feed into to the chair here. Thank you.
And that's a really good point. If you're all signed up to our email addresses, email lists such as Siobhan's list as well. So these are quite helpful avenues. Sorry, sir, go for it. No, that's a very, very good point. And I think, I mean, I've just been chair. This is my second meeting I've been chair since this forum now only meets twice a year. And I'm keen to look at the data similarly with Chris. How do you engage residents who want to join? So my day job was is in the NHS. So, you need to engage a variety of people from different languages, backgrounds, and also cognitive abilities as well. How do you get information that's easy to digestible? It is a tough gig because you can't get everyone you want to. But I think by analysing and just basically even just understanding the comms routes to information tonight, clearly, as much as it's important that the newsletter, the word of mouth, children rate is important. And I'm definitely going to take away that, to try and get more noticeable in my mind as well. So these are the approaches we can do. It's just, I think it's called omni-channel campaign. So it's not just digital, it is. No, absolutely, and you can't. And frankly, you've probably seen us enough on the doorstep as it is, but it takes about 7 times for you to hear a message once. So that's why you have different channels and multiple ways of doing it. But thank you very much, Chris, and really appreciate presenting tonight. One more round of applause for Chris. So, open forum. So what this obviously is here to speak about, one second, is to speak about any issue that residents want. And I'm conscious that many of you may want to speak about the Mitcham Gasworks development. Is that correct? Yes. That's correct? No? Okay. All right. So, okay, good. All right. So hold the horses 1 second. All right. So basically, I'm also chair of planning, and this is the planning committee. So I think we can establish that. But also, we don't have the developer here, nor do we have officers who can address any particular nitty-gritty queries. The number one best way is to take part in the consultation, whether you're supportive or you've got a concern. That being said, I am very keen to inform the developer of your concerns, questions, issues. And what I'd like to do, if you work with me, is we've got about 30, 40 minutes, is from the time I said about half on it, is basically start from first row here, work my way back, and try to basically raise any questions or concerns that could be captured, because we have got it recorded, and then the developer has that on record. But again, to be part of the formal consultation, please do go to the council website, please do fill it in with your support of our concerns. It's the best way you can get your voice heard. So I'll ask you. Go for it. What's your question?
Follow the story. We know how there. There is a fire.
Yeah. Bid-wise, yeah. Yeah. So I understand. Well, I'm not. But of course, but this is exactly where we need to get to, because there is a point that you may or may not be aware of, that there is predetermination. So myself, Jill, Dan, Michael, members of the planning committee, and it's important that we come to this decision with an open mind. Now, you can of course lobby us, email us, etc. But what I cannot say here and say you're right, you're wrong. I'm going to vote this way, I'm going to vote that way, because that's predetermination. We can't do that, and I won't have any sign of that. But what I do want to do is facilitate your views being heard by the developer. And they can actually make the decisions and the changes accordingly. They may listen, they may not. And then the planning committee will make its decision based on those facts. But again, it's really important we back that up by taking part in consultation. So what I'd like, no, I appreciate that. That's fine, but I appreciate what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is to start here and then you can go back to you. Would that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So should I give you the mic? Would you like to start it?
Yeah, I think they're suitable. I think you'll be able to see them from Mitcham Common, and they'll overshadow all the houses around them and the community orchard, which we work quite hard to build up into a lovely space. And the houses inside are too tiny and pokey and single aspect. Like, we're going to have people living there that are living miserable lives. Those are going to be our neighbours. We don't want them to be experiencing that kind of way of living.
One thing, I may ask you questions. It's not to challenge or say I don't agree or disagree. It's trying to tease out what you actually need.
Right, firstly, they're too high. There's too high density of people. The architecture is not, well, it's not greatest, it's just square blocks. A bit more architecture. What we were hoping for was more of what we got at the other end, what we should have had in the first place. If planning had worked out right, they would have been at the front. So that's what we're looking for, that sort of thing. Nothing above 5 stories. Because it's just, you're creating a problem, because you've had a problem at Fitzbridge and you knocked it down.
The same is that the height of the place, is the parking, the congestion, and I'd also like to know why the councillors that we're emailing are not getting back to us, not replying to us. I've only had one reply from my emails objecting to it.
Go single person, but single. But I can tell you that no one agreed this one. And you can be on the planning permission, you cannot be. End of the day, your position is to listening your people around. We gave a vote, and you are our voice. And what you have to understand that this is creating so much problem. These people have been lying. All the picture they show is people walking on the street. I didn't know. Did you know, guys, that Western Road will come in pedestrian? Because if you're watching this picture, there is a mother, son, and father happily on the middle of the highway of the road. So all these things they created, it's a pure lie, and you guys are there to protect us. Because you are our voice. It's not matter you like the design. You are there for us. And us, we don't like this. Simple as that. Density and everything people say.
There's massive infrastructure problems as well, like congestion on Western Road, bus routes. Obviously, we've got doctors closing down, things like that. That need to be addressed. As Serafina says, they show pictures of empty roads, and it's just not reality, to be honest.
So I think 2 points really. The first one is about infrastructures and how local doctors, local GPs, local schools, how are they placed to receive all these new people? And I'm personally not philosophically against buildings that are above 3 floors. I think it's okay if they have like a nice sort of design. It's more about the quality of the houses, because you can have high-rise buildings with beautiful houses inside, and you can have high-rise buildings with very poor internal designs. And I think if we want to really deliver the idea that Mitcham has to be leveled up to the other parts of Merton, we cannot
allow for low quality housing to be built and for loads of people to come in at a time when supermarkets are closing and such. So there needs to be a plan where if people come in, they are allowed to live in a dignified place with like more than a small flat with no windows, you know, like it needs to be dignified and it needs to come together with more GPs, more schools, more bus routes, etc. That's what I think most people feel like, yeah.
I've got one comment, even though I don't live in this part of the borough, is that you don't want it turning into looking like Croydon. Croydon is a complete disaster area with those huge buildings. I never go to Croydon unless I'm absolutely forced to, because it's just the wind tunnels, huge glass buildings. God, there's many things. You've got the Benedict, what's the other one that on site, was it that other site? Benedict Wharf, they're going to build others how high there as well. And the mayor agreed it. Said it can't, agreed it. You just don't want it to turn into Croydon. It'll just look appalling.
I just wanted to add what the gentleman said about the fact that we took down the slips because there was so much trouble with the clients that were there. We also took 3 blocks down in Province Hill. Did you know that? Because you're all so young and we're all so old.
No, don't keep saying it anymore. People don't want it. He wouldn't put my no on the notice board.
Does it have to be about the gasworks?
It doesn't have to be.
That's my question. Yeah, we have a lot of problems in certain parts of Mitcham about flooding, local flooding when it rains. Just took from my road outside this building on West Lawn, and top of that stretch. Are you doing anything about it? And if so, what?
So you might say that the road.
My road.
The road you mentioned as well. So just main highway.
The top of Brentcote and that pretty green road along there, it just floods every time it rains.
Yeah.
Where the old Queen's Head is.
Yeah, that's the road being dealt with.
Hey, Joe.
Could you, before we comment on the application, tell me when the inspectors report, whether the inspectors report on the consultation on easily state of the determination by the council in the effect of the capacity of that? How does that compare with the proposals made by the developer?
So I think someone also thinking about the land destination for that particular site and what the capacity was versus what the
Yes, I have looked at I have this impression online of this site, but I can't remember how many dwellings it says. So 600. So the developer is going to develop that site from Cllr, and there'll be a housing association presumably take it over. Do you know whether the people that will be housed in it are going to be people on Merton's housing list, or whether they will come from all over the place? Because it would be nice to have people who will be really cracked, unsuitable accommodation.
This product. So all we have is council negotiating the quality, so take people from under 65. So that's what it's saying, similar to so we have everything as so that's the general rule of the site.
Yeah.
So I have the same concerns as everybody else. It's far too tall. The majority of buildings blocks, tower blocks are 9 stories high. We don't have anything around here that's 9 stories high. It's just in out of character with Mitcham and the village feel that we would like to maintain and preserve. It's going to, if it does go ahead in its current form, it's going to be a David versus Goliath. You know, and personally, I don't want to be living in that sort of area.
Yeah.
There's too many single aspect flats. There are no homes. A person doesn't want to be living in a flat or a 4-bedroom, a 4-walled area with 1 window. That's just not humane. What window? And I'd like to know what the ward councils, of which I've got 3 and 1 is going to do for better homes for current and future residents of Mitcham.
I'll bring the ward councillors in here. Thank you.
My question is more about enforcement, because there doesn't seem to be any sort of enforcement when it comes to any of these building projects. What is classed as affordable housing? It seems to differ between what council thinks and what Mayor Carmen thinks. How much influence is he going to have on this overall dwellings? Because it seems, if you take Benedict Wharf, for example, the council came out on the side of residents. Next thing we know, Carnbrooks is put in, and we end up with even more. So we really need to keep finger on the pulse. But I'd like an answer to the question: what is affordable housing? What does that mean?
If you possible, that's a very good question, and it depends on who you're asking. So I think colleagues in the committee would say that they class affordable housing as actually those that house people on a housing registry. But affordable housing products also include shared ownership, and that's part of the calculations. And there's a national split, my head 60 to 40, that developers can place as shared ownership, but it ultimately depends on scheme and viability. What I can talk about in general terms is that since we share a community, we have stamped super hard on viability. So what does that mean in practicalities? It means if the developer says we can't do anything affordable, I have done another quality assurance check, so another person check the numbers, and lo and behold, the can do something affordable. So this is what we have been doing. Since I've taken the chair of the planning committee, we passed something to houses or flats, units of people, 19% of them are affordable. So that's the ratio. But the issue is the wider platform and affordable versus private. And there is 5 different factors within that. If you put browsers,
who checks up that they're actually adhering to what was agreed?
So there is, very good question. So there is a whole building planning process, and there is ultimately behind the scenes there's some conditions, and all councils, every council has to give a formal application into us and the committee if they suspect conditions is being followed. And that's from small schemes, but we've often know all the way to large mixes. And all councils have the provision of doing this. And we've taken, well, for example, Wimbledon College was conditional based on noise, and there was suspicious of all councillors that wasn't being followed. We pulled that in, had a mediation session now for successful outcomes. This is things we can do in the house.
Yes, hi, and I'm objecting to this because of the parking issues that are raising from this 600 properties being built. We have properties in Dorset Road and Bond Road, and it's a nightmare at the moment. You're making it even worse for us. We have it's a cul-de-sac, and people can't even park there at the moment. But you're making it even more problematic for people, residents living there. Also, the height of the building as well, that's also reasonable. I mean, you've gone from, was it 5 stories to 9 stories now? Well, they have, okay, they have this.
No, I just wanted to mention that, sorry, purely as a matter of interest, there's an equal protest going on in Streatham Vale in relation to the home-based Sainsbury's being knocked down. and Clarion have bought that site with another company, and they're planning on building a high-rise block of flats, etc., even higher than the one in Gasworth. So it might be interesting to keep an eye on that protest as well, because all the protesters are raising the same issues as they are here today in relation to the works in the down the road. And it's not that far away. And once we get 2 or 3 of them, then as someone else has said, then obviously there'll be more.
Thanks. So I'm from Merton Green Party, and we wrote an open letter to the council on the 14th of August last year. Andrew Judge, the Cabinet Member for Housing, did respond, but his response was that he couldn't really say anything substantive along the lines of what you were trying to explain, I think, Aidan, that there are limits to what councillors in certain positions can commit to. But I wanted to say at this forum that I've spent quite a few hours now helping residents to knock on doors and hand out the leaflets that the residents themselves have created. And really, it's unanimous opposition. Every single person, and I'm not saying this to score political points, I hope that the people who I've been out with would back me on this. Every single person who we spoke to said all of the points that people are raising here about the number of units, about the height, about the congestion, about the fact that over a third a single aspect. And I've also picked up on, this is my final point, a lot of frustration from residents about ward councillors not actively engaging. Now, I know this is very predictable coming from somebody's mouth in a different political party, but I really would urge the relevant ward councillors to do as I've done and go out with the residents and knock on doors. And you don't have to commit to saying anything, your personal opinion on the doorstep, but you can at least say, what do you think? Write it down on a clipboard and, help the residents in that way, because I sense there's some kind of desperation. Thanks for listening.
Hi. Are you able to respond in any way to the Thames Water report saying that you can't even, the developer wouldn't even be able to supply these people with water if it goes ahead in its present state of application? And again, that somebody mentioned earlier about the increase in the traffic, the ridiculous notion that these people aren't going to need parking, and that they only provide that everyone in 2030 is going to be renting cars instead of ownership. It just doesn't seem, it's not thought through.
No, good. I can't talk in generalities about the process, and mention relating to different points. So, I appreciate there is a general view, and maybe general views of many applications, but there is a legal process, and we don't do kind of commission like that. So, I appreciate the views of what was mentioned. In terms of the specifics, the reason why there is a consultation is so that everyone feeds back in the process. What happens is, particularly obviously, you have a massive report, and then, for example, officers who are putting that report together will put that to the developer, and then they'll have to respond. And if the response isn't adequate, then that will be weighed against the rest of the benefits and disbenefits of the scheme, and then that's what the planning committee decision.
Hello, my English not good, but I live in 26 Walsingham Road, by small road, but to double lane, but sometimes my guests come in and ticket men come in ticket. But second question, I live in 26 years, and I waiting list for council house, but council no accommodation. I still am waiting.
So, on the general issue of housing, we do need to build more houses, and we do have that we've given a target of 1,000 properties per year, and that includes HMOs and other aspects. But as you say, there are many people on housing lists for a very long time.
and can't be housed. And that's the nature of supply and demand issues that we have to.
Just want to say, I think it's far too high, far too dense, and Mitcham needs houses, not blocks of flats. Families need to be living in houses, not in boxes up in the air.
So I totally agree with everything everyone else has said, and referring to what Julie has said, stop this happening, building better, building beautiful, which says time and again, people don't want to live in blocks and blocks and want to live in streets and houses. My other question would be, would you build something like this, overcrowded, overdense, just inappropriate for the area in Wimbledon? You wouldn't. Why does everyone always think it's okay to do that here in Mitcham?
Yeah, I agree on all points made so far. The fact that the plot is surrounded by houses, it's a suburban housing development. There's a demand for family housing in the area. I think the height is out of keeping with the local area. Inadequate parking, lack of green space. The bulk and mass of the development is out of sync with everything in the local area. It's advertised as 6 blocks, but it's actually 10 separate buildings. I feel like some of the artist's impressions are pretty misleading. Yeah, the single aspect issue, the guidance is to build double aspect properties where possible. So I think that should be the aim here. The Thames water supply issue is a major red flag. I think there's a huge discrepancy between the draft local plan that was put together with the council's own research and data, and you talk about sort of community engagement. A lot of the local plan was put together with the assistance of community engagement and that communication, and the local plan said up to 400 units, and it feels like the developer has come along and said no, 600 because that works for us financially, and it feels like you're just ripping up the local plan and all of that community engagement, all the data, all of the research that you put together about infrastructure and what works for that site in terms of units, rip it up, and would rather appease the developer than fight for what's right and good and proper for Mitcham and that site.
Yes, sorry, we're going around. So, but you can catch me after. So, look, firstly, I just want to say thank you for taking part in that and actually trusting me in to listen and to sharing and all for everyone respecting everyone's views as well. So it was really, really good. Obviously, we've captured that now. I will, my action from this, Chris is noting these down, these minutes are public. I will flag it to the developer, get in contact with them so they've got it there. But as I said, key thing is what you said tonight, please do replicate it, support our concerns via the planning process as well. So does anyone have any other open forum items other than this? So there's one there, anyone else? 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 in the order. Yeah. I will call one of the councillors in on my left here to give the exact detail, because there's a variety of things. But you may have called Siobhan. You may have called, sorry, Stephen. Yeah, it is Stephen. Yeah. No, I thought from a cabinet perspective. Yeah, but anyway. So we'll hold it in a second. We'll go back. Anyone else? So Siobhan was on television. You may have seen her talking about the ULIS. So that's one of the things you may be referring to as well. So you had another point other than Gatwick?
Now, I thought, what's happening?
We'll take that away. I don't have the answer immediately now, but let's take that away. And so you.
What it was, I think, just an update. I know one of the local councillors was having a look at lighting in the car park at Morrison. It's been a problem for quite a few years, and there's a lot of dodgy stuff going on around the corner where there's no lights at all. So I just wondered if there was an update on that, because it's owned by a separate company, it's owned by something different. the two people that own the shop itself. It might sign up a single staff.
Sorry. Dangerous with you?
I would want to because the life was the officers all they fixed it, but the ones in the most the ones I've asked them to try and coordinate it off, do something about it. But they have told me that they fixed the crack or black. If that's not the case, let me know and I'll get the officer back.
Very much question of it, because I was thinking daily, and I've got full of that.
Right, so one thing at a time. No, 1 second, sorry. We've got, I want to feedback on those comments because we've got 5 minutes left and then we'll call it a day. So, Billy, do you want to update on you list? You don't know if you, no. All right, so what we'll do is we'll get a further detailed update on you list and get back to you on that via Chris. And sorry, we'll do one more round of questions. So yourself, you sir, and who's the third hand? Third.
You always say to us that we need to keep on doing some things about this Mitcham gas work. We got over 600 signature in petition. We got petition online. Over here, 100% they tell you this doesn't want it. We are the meeting with Sharon. Over 100 people came over and still disagree. What you want from us more to tell you that we don't like this structure? What you want from us to cross it to you that these things is not right?
So I think there's, again, you talk about within consultation and outside consultation. Sharon's meeting and other engagements have been either pre-consultation with the developer or outside the consultation process. For it to be included or form part of the officer's report onto the planning committee, you need to make your voice heard via the planning process officially. So going to Siobhan on her own isn't the planning process. But by going to Siobhan and then going, for example, to the council's website and making your representations there, that will be part of the planning process. So if that's the key.
Send your petition to the planning officer, we can report it in. So make sure you submit that petition to the planning.
I'll leave that to submit the by staff now, or by
So the details will be on the actual, because you'll be aware, probably frequent visitors to the webpage of planning application. So the details will be there, how you can do that. So I'm telling you, so you go there, so all the details are, so when you go to the planning portal on the council website, if you type in the reference number for the actual planning, then that will bring up details of this planning application. I'm assuming because of your detailed questions that you've gone there a lot, because it sounds like you've read the scheme, so that's why I assume you've gone there previously. But if you haven't, type in the reference number for the application, pop up, and then there's an option that says click here to take consultation, do that, and then you can provide further information as you need, and also have the details of the officers needing the planning application as well.
If there were any registration numbers, That's another objection to that. Was here. We think because there's so many consultations.
No, I appreciate that, but again, but if you talked about very detailed aspects of the scheme, so if you talked about the very detailed aspects of the, I'm assuming you've gone there and know where it is. So that was the issue. So that's my point. But if you haven't, have the reference number, Chris will will make it available. So that you go there and read the scheme and obviously make your representation. And there was one more question. It's not, but did you know this actually? Well, actually, there's a consultation going on about planning laws, so you may want to be as one of the criteria. So what I was going to do is actually open up to any other councillors who want to come back and need this to talk. You can do. Sorry.
So I don't know if she's sort of doing that.
It's in there now.
So the issue is, so the deadline is going to be, it's going to be the first week of March. So I haven't, well, sorry, me. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So it's 4th March. So basically, as Chris was alluding to, presentation of the petitions is too late for anything like that, and it still wouldn't form part of planning consultation. So the best thing to do is make your views in the planning consultation. So look, I'm going to call this to an end. Look, really appreciate your time, energy, and also working with me. Thank you so much. Big round of applause to Chris for all the efforts. Big round of applause to Bill. And thank you.